Hello and welcome back to The Lion's Den, the podcast that reliably doesn't have a musical introduction because I haven't gotten around to making one or finding one. I'm not really big enough to ask for someone's theme tune or like a song that's real to be used as my theme tune. Anyway, I'm your host Matt as always, and today I have one topic in mind, and I actually have a rough structure to talk about, so that's probably a first for a long while. Reminds me, actually, I tried doing scripted episodes of this podcast. That was awful. I write way too formally, mainly just because the only writing style I know how to do is like academic writing from university, so it didn't turn out very good, and it was hard to then say fluently. Anyway, I want to talk about my experience with Spotify because I've been using Spotify now for at least 5 years, which I find incredibly terrifying because that means that I started Spotify essentially when I was at university, which is crazy. I obviously, like most people, probably started out doing the whole music stuff. I don't know how much to say, but like I feel like everyone at some point went downloading music, whether legally or not. But I started out with that, but they were always rubbish files, right? They were always really crunchy, didn't sound great, but it got me through my childhood years, and I'm still here today. When I went to university, however, I got very much, oh god, I can't talk. I was much more conscious about things like viruses and having problems with my computer, especially when I was at university, because it was like, this is important now. So I switched over to streaming. I don't exactly know how I jumped on it, but I eventually just went straight headfirst into Spotify and haven't looked back since. I actually think it's a really good idea for me and for the vast majority of people. Most of us just want to sit down and listen to music. We don't really care too much about it sounding fabulous like an audiophile does. We're not super into owning music and having everything physically ourselves. We're just happy to have a wealthy library of very, very broad music to just sit down and listen to. And even now, things like podcasts, which I got into much later in the game, but that's been a wonderful addition to my sort of repertoire of things to listen to. And I think it's really good because it just gives you that instant access to everything. Like, I can show my parents music they've probably never heard of for so long because we've got music from the far-flung 20s to the hot, fresh new stuff that's literally being released daily by people that you've possibly never heard of or even knew existed. And I find that absolutely awesome. My music library, when anybody ever asks me, like, what type of music do you listen to? I say, I don't. I listen to everything. Other than some really specific niche genres, the first one that comes to mind being grime, I listen to a huge broad range from literal K-pop, J-pop, classical, regular pop, electronic in all of its subgenres, some rock stuff. I listen to so many different things that you can be scrolling through my liked songs and go from Ed Sheeran to Luther Vandross to Green Day to the guy who wrote the Spirited Away theme. Literally, I jump around so much, but it's awesome because that's what Spotify allows. The biggest problem for me, though, is that Spotify released a feature called Enhanced, and then they slightly changed it again. Now, initially, what it did was, in your liked playlist, you press this Enhanced button, and it would slot into your liked playlist new songs based on what it thinks you would enjoy. And I loved that because I could see them in the list, and I'd just grab them and play them and say, okay, do I actually like the sound of this song or not? And I found so many new songs through that method. I loved it. And then they changed how it worked, and I hate how they changed it because you can still do that, but you have to have it as a smart shuffle now. So you'll hit shuffle on your liked songs, and periodically through your liked songs in this new shuffle playlist it's created, it will slot in new songs. But I've noticed that it doesn't add new songs very often. If I turn it off and back on again, days apart, it'll slot in the same songs that I've heard previously. Whereas the enhanced feature seems like it would take the list and completely fill in new songs every single time. So you got a lot more variety. And also, this smart shuffle seems to get absolutely screwed based on your listening habits. So, for example, I like to listen to lo-fi every once in a while. I love lo-fi for late night driving because it's very calm and not very high energy, so it allows me to focus but still have something chill. But I don't save any of that music to my liked songs. But for some reason, I listen to those tracks once and then Smart Shuffle says, yes, let's recommend it to them. I'd literally have it where I'd be listening to the Smart Shuffle. I'd go through a bunch of songs, some high energy, some chill, but every recommended song was a lo-fi track. And I'm like, no, I want something akin to what I've just listened to, but new. So it's frustrating because they had a fantastic feature with the enhanced thing and then they ruined it, which is really upsetting. But it still works largely. Like, you can still find a lot of good stuff in there. You just have to work a bit harder at it and it's a little more cumbersome. I hope that they maybe consider reverting it back to the enhanced button. Or what I would really love is, you clearly have this information and this data to say, here's some songs we would recommend. Now just put that in a playlist for me so I can just go through all of the new stuff. I don't want to have to wade through the things I already like to find new stuff. I just want the new stuff, because the Discover Weekly things are never relevant to me. Almost never relevant to me, so I just don't bother with it. Which comes on to the next thing. Ages ago, they released this thing called the Spotify DJ. And I saw it on a video by some American people who cover technology, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a really cool idea. And what it is it's an artificial intelligence system that looks at your habits and your playlists and your music and tries to recommend flows of songs, essentially. Some new, some stuff you already know, and it would kind of jump around between different vibes, as they call it. So like, one vibe would be your morning, let's get you happy and high energy, and one vibe would be maybe here's stuff you were listening to in 2017, for example. Or like, he'd be like, here's some of the latest stuff that I think you'll like in the pop genre. And that sounds great. That sounds awesome. You know, you have essentially someone who's picking music and curating it to you, and hopefully it'll hit your likes. I think I screwed mine up. I think because my listening habits are absolutely all over the place, that this DJ could not hit it if I gave it a list of music to play. It would not have ever figured me out in a million years. It gave me a whole vibe of Calvin Harris music. No. I like some songs by Calvin Harris, but by some I mean like 3. Dude writes so much music that he kind of hits everything, and I do not like a lot of it because my taste is weird. But it gave me a whole like 6-song section of Calvin Harris, and I was not vibing with it. And then it was doing some weird pop stuff that I also didn't like, and it went off the rails. It started recommending really weird stuff to me, and I said, nope, I'm getting out. And that's kind of disappointing, because I hoped that it would have, again, given me an avenue to find new music that I really like, because to me that's the whole point of this service. Rather than buying music myself, this service allows me to find new music constantly and expand my library. But it's really difficult. So yeah, I might try the DJ again now that it's been around a little bit. Maybe it can read me a little bit better now that it's existed on the UK platform and has seen my information. We'll find out. I'll briefly touch on the fact that podcasts have been a really nice thing for me and will hopefully be a savior for me in the future. I didn't realize I enjoyed just listening to people talk, which is essentially what a podcast is, right? It's just nice to fill space with something auditory, but which isn't music, because music is quite energy intensive to listen to. You know, your brain's thinking about so much. It's thinking about the tonal harmonies, it's thinking about the words that are being sung, it's thinking about all of the different stuff that's happening, that it's very fatiguing if you're not careful, if you listen to it too much. Whereas listening to someone talk, it's just like a conversation. We converse infinitely, so that's easy to listen to. So I'm very happy that podcasts are a thing that they've added, and it's enjoyable to just have on, especially when you listen to a comedy podcast, because that's always good. Right, last thing to touch on, just so we've got a little bit extra time. The fun thing is Spotify Wrapped. Absolutely hilarious seeing all of the information. Because I am an introvert and sit in my own world, I listen to a lot of stuff. I think last year I had something like 32,000 minutes of listened time, which is a lot. It was in the upper threshold of people in the UK, apparently. Which I was sat there like, do people just not listen to music, like when they drive or at the gym, or maybe that's just me. I don't know, but the statistics are always hilarious, always interesting, and it's always a bit of an achievement when you're in the like top 0.0001% or something of listeners for an artist or for a song. That's good, and it does show you things previously. One thing I wish it would show you is the number of times the track has been played. I do miss not being able to see how many times I've played a track, because I would love to know what is my most played song in my entire library. That would be really interesting. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Spotify? Or do you use something like Apple Music, which I'm aware is very similar, but obviously it's Apple Music, so it probably works great with Apple stuff. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed listening. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next week. Bye!